Welcome to The World Today. I'm Waqas Majeed. Today we're talking about fake news and social media. We're talking about the impact of fake news and social media on society, especially during election year. We've had many reports about Facebook affecting the outcomes of elections. We had cases in the US, in the UK as well, and that's our topic of discussion today. So let's begin our conversation. I'd like to introduce our guests in the studio. Joining me for this conversation, first of all, we have Asad Baig, who works with the Media Matters, and with him we have Aoun Sahi. He's the Bureau Chief of 24 News. Thank you very much for being here. Asad, I'll start with you, and we'll start with the election process itself, since we are in the thick of it. What has the impact of social media been on the election outcomes as a result of fake news that has been propagated? If you could talk about that.
Yeah, thank you so much. First off, I think we should decide what do we want to call it. So fake news, the term, and this is something which is very important, especially for the media people. I'm sure Aoun will agree with me on this. Fake news is a term which is used to target journalists and credible journalism across the world, especially by world leaders who do not want media to be reporting or to be critical of them. For instance, Trump. So Trump has been really targeting the journalists from CNN and others, the credible media outlets in the US, and calling them fake news. So fake news is really a term which is, I think for journalists it's a self-defeating term. What we call it is misinformation and disinformation online. Having said so, we have seen, I think this is nothing which is new. We've seen the elections in the US, we've seen the elections in the UK, Italy, and most recently Karnataka, India. And I think all of these elections, in all of these elections, social media platforms had a very, very important role to play. Let's start with the US. Everybody knows how the Facebook and various other platforms impacted the people's choices in the US election. So let's not talk about that. One thing that people might not know, recently the elections in India, Karnataka, which is more relevant to us being in South Asia. WhatsApp had a huge role to play in this. And so WhatsApp, technically speaking, is the most tricky social media platform. It's absolutely impossible to monitor WhatsApp. So what happened in Karnataka was that there were screenshots, supposedly screenshots. They were actually doctored images of various websites like BBC and so on. And then people put in various graphs and others kind of like fake headlines, false headlines, misleading news information, which never happened, which was never there on the news website, completely made up. And they started circulating in the WhatsApp groups in Karnataka. And there is this theory which is out there, which is scientifically proven now, that the fake news spreads or false information spreads much faster than the real information. And that's exactly what happened. So as a result, a lot of people believe that information. And most of this information were actually being propagated as a result of surveys, which were supposedly conducted by these institutions like BBC, for instance. And they were never conducted. Of course, they were false. And so that affected, supposedly, a lot of political decisions. And since then, we've been thinking about how social media platforms could impact the political decision-making in Pakistan. Now, coming to that, Twitter is not very popular in Pakistan, but I would say Twitter is perhaps the most influential social media platform in Pakistan. Having said so, I'm sure you would, and other journalists can also see that there are always political hashtags going on Twitter, right? For various political parties or leaders or ideologies and so on. I don't need to be a scientist to find out that. And if you open up Twitter and look at the timelines, you don't need to be a very sort of a tech-savvy person to see the kind of human bots and the number of human bots contributing to that political debate. And these human bots essentially are people who are humans. They're not bots. They're not automated softwares. They're humans, and they are perhaps given this job to further
any agenda.
Political agenda, propaganda, or to further a political ideology for that.
So
matter,
basically,
right?
one individual makes a number of fake profiles on Twitter or Facebook or any other social media. So it's just one individual who has maybe 20 different accounts and is using them.
Exactly. And the way it happens is that they are propagating everything which is basically given to them. And they're making so much noise that a lot of organic users, people who are like us, for instance, or people who are not very tech savvy, people who are not very digitally literate, a lot of them actually believe the false things that they are spreading, right? So,
Right.
and hence the idea of misinformation and false information online.
Okay.
I think this is, just wrapping it up, I think this is perhaps one of the biggest challenges right now in Pakistan, and specifically that nobody's talking about it. Not the Election Commission of Pakistan, not the Information Ministry, not anybody in the mainstream media even. You know, for instance, this is the first of the talk shows that I've seen on this particular issue. So yeah, I think we need to talk about it more often.
Absolutely. On you being a journalist and working in this environment, what are your views about fake news, and how does it affect the working of a journalist? Because it, as Asad has said, that it also casts aspersions on the integrity of journalists. So how do you deal with these issues?
Yes, very rightly said by Asad, and definitely these days we are talking about fake news or disinformation and social media's kind of impact. If you see the mainstream media, especially these private TV channels from last 2 years or so, or from last so many years, the impact of social media and mainstream media is huge. We have seen so many stories, starting from that story from Karachi, that boy who was killed by Shahrukh Jatoi, and then a campaign started on social media, and then it was picked by mainstream media. So this kind of impact social media can create on mainstream media. You are talking about fake Twitter accounts. We have seen recently, like they were PTI given ticket to somebody who was kind of accused, or who was kind of allegedly who was accused of raping Shabnam ji, a famous actress, was moved to Bengal. Yes, and the very next day, and in fact in next couple of hours, we seen a account of Shabnam ji, and she was thanking Imran Khan for that act, that he has just pushed that guy out of his party.
That was obviously fake.
That were obviously fake. The same account then turns up, and when Zaim Qadri resigns from PML, and the same account, it gives Zaim Qadri's kind of story. And what happened in both cases, mainstream media picked it, whether it was Shabnam's case or whether it's Zaim Qadri's case, and only some of us, they just went to the timeline of that account, and they found that the guy who has been operating that account, he didn't even bother to delete the older version of his tweets, and the same account, once it was Shabnam's account, then it becomes Zaim Qadri's account, then there's another guy's whose account it becomes. So this is how it's being operated, because they know the shortcomings of mainstream media. What's the problem with the mainstream media? We are kind of this red line, this breaking news, and this pressure to give the news first. We don't care about, there are those accuracy, media ethics, and those steps which used to be taken, because the watchdogs are not there in media. People like me, we are sitting here, but the WhatsApp is the problem in media as well, because most of the news is being generated in WhatsApp groups. So I, as an editor, I could be in that WhatsApp group of my,
community.
My channel.
Right.
But my reporters, they are bombarding that, group with their information. So I may not be able to see most of them. I may be busy here, I may be busy there. But that is official WhatsApp account of our channel. So once a news is filed there, it's supposed to be taken by the head office.
Right.
And then there are no watchdogs. People sitting in head office in all those channels, most of them, they don't have the experience.
There's no vetting process.
There's no vetting process, and the institution of editor is not very, kind of empowered, and it's almost not there in channels, most of the channels. And even if you have that, institution, most of the editors, they are not social media savvy. Most of them, they don't know how people can Photoshop different, kind of pages. Right. Even Channel 24's, breaking news pages, I've seen so many fake news being, distributed. Not attributed, it's our, channel's logo, and everything is same, but the news is kind of fake, and it seems as at the first.
So shouldn't there be some kind of regulation to stop this from happening on?
this should be regulation, and as Asad was saying, that Ministry of Information and ECP at this point definitely, but there should be some internal kind of process should go on, and this rat race of breaking news and this rat rate of getting news first or getting the credible news, it should be discussed, and that is the only way we can go forward, because these days the problem, activism and journalism, there are the border has blurred, they have overlapped, and every journalist, most of them, they think that they're judges as well. So, they don't care what's going on most of the time. They just get some information from some fake account, and that reporters kind of enthusiasm, and we need to kill that enthusiasm. We need to go to the processes. But the current, TV channels, especially the private TV channels, kind of mechanisms, they basically encourages you to do this kind of, to file this kind of stories, fake stories, because credibility is something which is not being discussed these days. People, they say, look, we filed 6 stories, 2 of them they were, correct, and 4 of them they were not correct. Not a big deal. So we are even using that cricketing terms, like 4 were caught and 2 were our sixers. So just focus on sixers. I gave 2 sixers today and 2 were caught. So I am a kind of on equal, ground. So these kind of terms are being used, and in this kind of time period where fake news, 2 years back, this this terms was not being used in the world. Only last year, a dictionary, in the American dictionary, they they basically declared 10 word of 2017, and fake news was top of them, and they termed it a noun. So it's only Donald Trump, basically, he mainstreamed it. Whatever news was against him
was
fake, and whether it was NYT, whether it was Washington Post, whether it was CNN, CNBC, everything is fake. Only Fox, which is totally on his agenda, is the.
Correct.
And same is being happening here. We have seen what happened with Geo. We have seen what's going on these days. When Geo was on the other side, everything was fake. Then some kind of arrangement made between Geo TV and PTI, Geo TV and military establishment, and over the days and over the nights, we have seen that particular kind of phenomena, that everything on Geo was fake, is fading away. Now Geo again getting some kind of space, and their journalists are not being trolled that way on social media. Even journalists, the worst thing they do, they troll journalists on social media. It's not only about filing the stories. Social media is used especially for the female journalists. We have seen what happened with that female journalist who did that report on Imran Khan. The very next day we seen his husband, who's from Gilgit-Baltistan. He has a fair skin like you. He was termed a Jew. His pictures were posted everywhere, and she got life threats. Imran Khan has to intervene, and he come up with a message, look, I am okay with that, and then at once, everything become normal. So our leaders, whether it's Imran Khan, whether it's Maryam Nawaz, even PPP, they have huge social media wings. If you look at these parties during last 2-3 years, what they have focused on more, what they have invested on the more, it's their social media sections, whether it's
a very interesting phenomena, and I want to talk about this with Asad as well, and you can also give your opinion on this. What I've noticed, Asad, is that when people are receiving these WhatsApp messages, which are obviously fake, there is a demographic divide in terms of who accepts that as the gospel truth and who is able to see that it is fake news. Now, that is very interesting for me to observe, that the older generation, those who are above 40 or 50, are more keen to believe everything that they receive on WhatsApp, whereas the younger lot, the 15, 16-year-old children, or even younger, are able to see that that particular news is fake. Can you explain this particular phenomena?
I think it makes sense because what we call digital literacy, or basically being literate in terms of digital platforms and digital technologies and so on, that we see more often in younger people who we call millennials, right? And so they perhaps have a more better idea of how images can be photoshopped and edited. But just to add into what you just said, there has been a research Again, the research went on for 5 years. And the conclusion was that Facebook and various other platforms, they basically are operating on the basis of contributing to what we call echo chambers. And so the concept is that whatever you believe, you're most likely to believe the information which substantiates your belief, right? If I believe, for instance, if I have a certain political belief, and if there is a news which substantiates my belief, I'm more likely to accept it and share it and spread it and so on. That, I think, is exactly what's happening right now. Another thing what Aoun has very rightly pointed out, and I like to substantiate it and endorse it, that when we say policy making against fake news or misinformation, that's a very tricky thing, because look, who's going to define misinformation and disinformation? Because clearly, if you're talking about policy makers, then anything which criticizes them, like Aoun said in case of Trump, anything which is critical to them is fake information, right? Is false information. So then the point is, who's going to define misinformation if we go into the policy making? And the best way that I can think of right now, instead of a policy making or instead of a policy curbing this, is internal discussion, like Aoun said, within the media houses, within journalist community, within the people who are tech savvy or who are present on the social media. And I think this phenomena, and let me say it very clearly, this phenomena stands to hurt journalists the most. The journalists are the people who are perhaps getting the most hit from this thing. I just very quickly want to show this image. I'll also give it to your producer. So somebody was circulating this image of Hamid Mir, and associating
point
this
it to
quote.
the camera so that
So associating this quote, saying that Kulsum Nawaz in the UK, she's perfectly all right and there is nothing wrong with her, and so this is a breaking information which I'm giving to you. So this was Hamid Mir's picture from his talk show, and this image was being circulated. Hamid Mir was sort of responsible enough that he found this image, and then he tweeted from his official account, original account, saying that this is not me, and this is not me.
It's closed now.
Yeah, let me just bring it back. And he actually tweeted it that this is not me, and this is fake information being circulated in my name. And so this is what I'm saying, that the people who stand to get most damage of this phenomena are the journalists. And then my question is, what are these people now doing about it? The biggest responsibility lies on the people who have most followership on Twitter and Facebook, namely the anchor persons. They are responsible to make sure, A, that whatever information that they see is being circulated in their name, they come out and they they deny it, or they sort of give out the background of that.
They have a counter narrative.
They counter it. And also the reporters who are present on Twitter, it's very important for them to intervene as well, because like Aoun was saying, it's not just that anybody is sharing these images and they will remain in their cocoons, and thousands of people will share these images and they'll actually believe it, because
Right.
they
will be influenced by
polity.
this.
Yes, they will be not only influenced to this by this information, but also they will use this information to target and attack other people. Right, and so this is extremely important.
It's a dangerous phenomenon.
It's a very dangerous phenomenon. And wrapping up, I'll also tell this and share this with you, that the World Economic Forum, they've actually categorized misinformation as one of the biggest threats to human society. And I'm not talking about Pakistan, I'm not talking about
It's a global issue.
I'm talking about human society. That's the World Economic Forum talking. And so I'm not sure if we are not to do anything about it now, when we are going to go into the most trickiest election in Pakistan, perhaps in the history of our country, then when will be the best time to do something about it?
Well, the phenomena of fake news is, as Asad has pointed out, extremely damaging to the journalistic profession overall. So what kind of regulations, rules, organizations such as PEMRA are doing about such phenomena? Because we also have cybercrime, which is a crime, and we've got some laws over there. But when we talk about spreading disinformation with negative or damaging consequences, then isn't that also a criminal act? Isn't there some way that act can be criminalized and people can be taken to task for spreading misinformation on social media? Shouldn't there be some kind of regulation created for that?
It is definitely, and Asad was saying, and I have read news in India. I'll come to your question. In India, during last 1 month or so, 3 people have been killed only because of misinformation spread on WhatsApp. There was misinformation spread that there are people who are abducting kids. There was a guy who just stopped at a village, and he wants to ask the way, which is the right way to go some other village. He just stopped, and people came out and they killed him because they think he's the guy who abducts kids. So this happened in India right next door to us, and so much is happening here as well. When it comes to regulation, the problem right now is the capacity. Our state institution, whether it's PTA, whether it's PAMRA, whether it's Ministry of Information, whether it's Interior Ministry, there's huge gap when it comes to laws and implementation of those laws. And we have seen, like in cybercrime wing of FIA, you have only 12 people who have been looking after the whole Pakistan, and they are the guys who are responsible to when it comes to cyber crimes and spreading misinformation. They are the guys who are responsible to deal with it, or PTA is the authority that is supposed to deal with it. They are doing nothing, and serious capacity issues, serious human resource issues, because first you need to understand the phenomena. Most of the people in our institution, they are not even ready to accept it as the dangerous kind of phenomena. They just think.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but in a society like ours, which is not the most literate society in the world, the damage is multiplied even more because people are ignorant, and then they accept what's ever happening on social media as the gospel truth, and then they act on it. And
this is what happening. This is what we have seen in Asia Bibi's case. We don't have social media in that time. We have mainstream media. In the recent case when government come up with some kind of amendments in that election law, and at the end of the day your law minister has to resign, but there was nothing substantiate. But on social media there was such a campaign was going on, and then you see a sit-in over here, and during that sit-in we saw so many misinformation and fake news. We have been shared the images of the then law minister that he is in Saudi Arabia performing Umrah and asking the God for forgiveness whatsoever he has done. Those were older images of him, like last year or even before that he went there and to perform Umrah, but they linked it with that particular incident, and then they showed that he's repentant and he's gone to Kaaba Sharif and to perform Umrah and just ask God forgive him what he has done. So these kind of things were which is going on, and they could be really, really damaging. I have just told you example of India, and even in Pakistan, this fake news and this WhatsApp and Twitter, they are doing so much damage to credibility of the journalist. I personally, whenever I go to somebody, they just wanted me to give them some insight which is nowhere. But when I tell them, look, I don't know what you are talking about, they said, look, we know everything because it was on Facebook. Even when I went to my village, I am the least informed person because they know more than me. They know each and everything, and then they taunt me, look, you don't want to tell us. We already knew everything which you are trying to hiding us. So this kind of phenomena, and then they spread it like anything, in villages and in among the, as you are saying, illiterate, most of them, I wouldn't say illiterate, but uneducated lot, and which are highly, hyper national,
yes,
which are highly, when it comes to blasphemy, you just, spread something on social media and see the aftershocks and kind of effects. I know so many friends who have been, couldn't go to the public because so much was spread against them on social media. So this has become a new engine for all those people who wanted to
So what are we talking now about is the criminalization of these acts. Asad, has there been any legislation on this matter, or how are we going to be dealing with this aspect, because it has to be dealt with?
First off, I think let me say it very clearly again that it's a slippery slope when we say criminalizing information or misinformation or disinformation, because then again, who are we going to essentially send to jail? People who are spreading this or people who are generating this?
Obviously the generating ones.
So yeah, that's what I'm saying. When the information is being generated and it's being shared by literally hundreds of thousands of people, how exactly are we going to pinpoint the person or the source where this information was originated from?
Well,
So
isn't there a way to find that
that's
out?
what I'm saying. It's a very tricky thing to do. Also, it's a very slippery slope. Let me also say that the cybercrimes law, one we've been talking about in the past 1 year, it actually criminalizes misinformation, but then again, it criminalizes misinformation which targets a natural person. So if I say something, for instance, online, which is which is false information, and it targets on, then on can go to FIA against me, right? So it's that misinformation which is out there, which is
That's
like
pretty similar to the libel laws that exist.
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
how effective are those laws? Because
not very effective.
That's
Let
what
me
the
tell you,
real
not very
question, because-
effective, and hence I'm saying that it's a slippery slope and so on. The second point, which I think are missing from this conversation, is the role of the platforms. Because look, what are we talking about again? We are talking about misinformation on the social media platforms. Which are they? What are they? They're Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, and various others, right? So then, is there a role that these platforms need to play in the world? And is there a responsibility these platforms have? This is perhaps the most important question. We Pakistanis are not the ones who invented these or developed these platforms, right? So naturally, let's say we have libel laws in Pakistan. Let's say if somebody is posting information about you from UK, what are we going to do about it? Are we going to send Interpol to get him to Pakistan, right? So this essentially the issue of jurisdiction in internet governance, it's a huge problem. Not essentially a problem, but a huge challenge. Hence, the role of Twitter, Facebook is very important. We should also laud the platforms which are trying to do something about countering misinformation. Let me tell you again, Facebook is coming up with a lot of very interesting, very sort of innovative initiatives to counter misinformation online, also in Pakistan. They're trying to educate people. They're trying to sort of come up and partner with fact-checking networks. So Pointer is one of the biggest fact-checking networks of the world. In Pakistan, we don't essentially have a Pointer partner. In Urdu, I guess we have AFPs working with them. So they're partnering with them for fact-checking. If there's something which needs to be fact-checked, Pointer's partners will actually provide counter information and so on. And mind you, these people are journalists, and journalists of the highest sort of level. But unfortunately, Twitter is not doing anything. What Twitter says is that we are a tech platform, and it's not our responsibility to moderate content or to govern content which goes. That's to me, that's a very dangerous stance. And so we essentially need to, as the government of Pakistan and as Pakistan, a country, we need to be engaging with these platforms, the management and the owners of these platforms, to actually come up with policies that counters it. And lastly, again, which is something that we are missing out from this conversation, is the role of the Pakistani media itself. I keep saying it again and again. When was the last time that somebody from the mainstream media actually came up and did something to educate people to whether or not to consume online information in a reasonable way or not? So this is perhaps one of the biggest problems that we have. The mainstream media is not playing its role. What they do is they pick up stories without, like Aoun was saying, pick up stories without authentication, run it like as it is, and then it's embarrassment for all of us, right, as consumers and as media entities and so on. What perhaps we need to start out with, small steps, we need to start out with, let's say, a cohort of 10 anchors. These are the people who everybody follows in Pakistan, including yourself, for instance, right? And they need to express a commitment to educate people, the millennials and the digital generation that we have, in terms of identifying fake news online or misinformation online, countering it. And they're very basic, simple steps. For instance, we have launched this video just, I think, a week ago. It's in Urdu, and it says 7 tips to identify misinformation online. Very simple, basic tips, like, read the date, like Aoun was saying, the images were from very long ago, and then don't read the headline, read the whole story, talk about what is the credibility of the news website that you're getting this news from, right? What is the credibility of a person that you're getting? Talk about fake accounts, right? How you can verify that Twitter is a fake. So for instance, I also have an image of another account. It's a fake account of Captain Safta, and he has tweeted a picture of Nawaz Sharif, perhaps in London somewhere, looking at a watch. And the text says that Nawaz Sharif is now so poor that he has to sell his watch to I don't know, do whatever. And so, anybody who sees this image and don't have an idea of fake accounts on Twitter, he or she will believe it, right?
Yeah,
So
but
then-
there's also a fine line over there, because what we're talking about on the one hand is the freedom of expression
Exactly.
versus regulation. And we're also talking about the fine line that is between humor, satire, and news. That also is a very fine line. So you should be able to discern whether a piece of news is satire or not. And there have been so many cases, even in the mainstream media, where certain articles by certain journalists have appeared which were obviously satire, but were read by a huge number of people as
And they believed it.
as the truth. And it was shocking for the writer himself. And the writer had to come and clarify, okay, please, this is supposed to be funny. It was supposed to be satire. How could you accept it as the gospel truth? How are we going to deal with this sort of a mental issue, mental capacity issue that we have in our society?
Look, satire is usually marked, right? I'm not sure if you're asking this question.
You
to
can
me, but-
please
but,
go
but
ahead.
just
Both
very
of you can
quickly, I'm
answer.
not talking a lot, but just satire is usually marked. It's very clearly declared. The items which are satire, or which are supposed to be parody accounts, for instance, they're very clearly declared. They're hundreds and thousands of parody accounts of Trump, for instance, but they're very clearly declared that these are parody accounts. Also, the people that the society that these accounts are operating in, the people there are digitally literate. Let me tell you, they are much more ahead in terms of technology than we are, or our population in Pakistan, right, in general. So they have an idea, they have this understanding of. Also, like you said, and I think it's a very, very intelligent point that you just made, if we are not talking about banning fake accounts, right? We're not talking about stopping people from running parody accounts. We're not talking about, for instance, like I just said, that nobody should, be critical of Nawaz Sharif or any other politician. They should be. But then again, there has to be some way of identifying whether or not this information that they're doing. And they should not do it in the guise of, so for instance, they should not do it as a real person, right? There has to be a way of identifying people. And that's where I'm telling you that the media's responsibility is to educate people, because this is something new we're dealing with, right?
Yeah, let's get Aoun's opinion on this.
Yes, you have been, you really pointed it well. And satire, which I think one of the articles which was about Malala, and even today I seen, I think couple of months back, that article referred in some Urdu kind of article, and even after that guy, the journalist, he has come up with the explanation, and even it was marked as well as satire, but still it again and again comes up. The problem is again illiteracy and kind of literacy rate, and the kind of standard of education which we are giving people. And then again we'll come back to conspiracy theories in our world, because in Pakistan we have such a fertile environment for conspiracy theories. And when it comes to something like I still remember, like Malala's parents, they were Polish and they left her to that his now parents, and still the people, everybody was most of them, they really literally trust it, because West was involved. Even Poland is not that West, it's Eastern Europe, but still, because it's in Europe and it's the conspiracy, and he was the guy, and the kind of language he used. But it's the problem with our conspiracy theories, and a new kind of political generation which has been emerged in Pakistan during last 10 years or so, with the emergence of it's the same with the social media, with the internet. During last 10 years or so, we have seen a new class emerge, who thinks that it's even worse than the believing in conspiracy theories. They think that they are the best, and if they are doing something, everybody should endorse it. Like I would tell you, like most of the, I'm going to use like PTI walas, they think that last time they voted, and how come they voted for the first time, and the guy for whom they voted, he didn't emerge as winner. They need to understand, like somebody like me who is maybe running a tailor, who is running a shop, his vote is equal than if somebody has done PhD, whatsoever that is. So, a new class of political people who totally believe in they think that everything is like in black and white. So, conspiracy theories, they have given it to totally new kind of dimension, and now they have engines like social media, like Twitter, like WhatsApp. So, now it's easy to disseminate all that kind of information. And once you started disseminating it, nobody would question. Even the sanest people, they would even so many times, what I do, I just get some information and I pass it on to so many others, knowingly that this is propaganda, knowingly that this is fake news, but just for the sake of sharing. Somebody sharing it with me, and I'm going to share it.
You can't really see the intentions behind a share. For example, if there is a fake news and I share it with you, for example, that share would mean, look, it's a fake news or it's funny, but somebody else might just accept it as the gospel truth again.
But
That's a very, very thin line and tricky situation that we're dealing with. Moving forward, how do you deal with this situation? There must be some way that scientists, social scientists have been observing this phenomena. They've written about it. They've also written about the dangers of these tablets and these devices for children. So moving forward from there, has there been some kind of a study or research or a plan to counter this, or no, nothing as yet?
Like I said, this is one of the challenges that the world is trying to deal with. So it's not just us. We are starting this debate, and we are kind of, we should, and also we need to hit the ground running, because the world is way ahead of us in the discussion on misinformation and disinformation online, right? Having said so, there are various preferences, individual preferences, right? If you ask this question to anyone else, I'm not sure what the answer you'll get. Perhaps people will talk about legislations and policy making and so on. I, for one, believe that we need to start with educating the people, telling them what's right, what's wrong. If they do it intentionally, that's their choice. But they should not do it unintentionally. They should not just because, present the argument that just because they don't know better, perhaps, that they're believing this information. So one thing that we have done is that we have created this very small bite-sized Urdu manual, or Urdu kind of like a pamphlet, which is kind of which is very graphical and so on.
Do you think that the mainstream media should also play a part and run awareness campaigns?
That's what I was coming to.
Specifically,
yes, exactly.
Targeting
they
these
should.
issues.
And I will request you and Aoun from this platform as well that please share that manual. I'm sure you have a lot of following on Twitter if you are present on Twitter. So please share that and let people read that. So it's a very simple 2, 3-pager, 5-pager document. It's very graphical, so anybody who will look at it will read it. Very basic things about identifying fake accounts on Twitter, fake accounts on Facebook, and so on. So that sort of thing. Also, media. I keep saying it. I cannot emphasize more on it. Media. It's the responsibility of the media, because media is the entity getting most damage with this phenomena. Media and journalists are anchor persons, because every time there is a political hashtag, we have been monitoring. Every single time there is a political hashtags, there are posters, screen grabs, doctored images of Hamid Mir, of Aoun Sahi, of various other anchor persons, just like taking a shot from TV and then photoshopping the title on it. So Hamid Mir will be talking about whatever that you want to talk about. So essentially the media, the mainstream media is the entity getting most damaged by it. So I think they should be the one. And let me tell you one more interesting thing. If there is a legislation against fake news, then again media will be the one who will be most damaged by it, because anything which is not acceptable to policymakers is fake news, mind you.
Yeah, so journalism itself
exactly.
seems to be stuck between the devil and the deep blue sea in this situation. There's nowhere left to run or hide. On moving forward, what are the issues that you feel journalists have been facing in this particular election term? Because there have been a number of previously well-known established politicians that have been, their papers have been rejected, and then later on they get accepted. So there's a lot of confusion that's surrounding the process. So what role is the media playing for the people to clarify what's happening?
The problem right now, media is going with the flow. Most of the time we don't, we don't concentrate on processes. We are a media which is trained to cover the events, not the issues. And even we cover the issues like events. This is the problem. And because you need a lot of investment if you want to cover an issue like an issue. You need kind of experts, you need specialities. But right now the same journalist covering election commission, the same guy is covering high court, the same guy is covering crime. So it's a kind of hodgepodge kind of situation which really serves the owners, because they don't need to invest a lot. But for the people and for the journalists, I don't think that they have a lot to maneuver, because they don't have time to go and report about the processes. And I know that some of the guys, they were, courts, they disallowed them to run the election and then allowed them to run the election. But we don't know the processes involved in all that, news, because we don't have time to report on those processes. And we basically, the media adopted in a way that it thinks that it has a kind of pulse of the people. If you see all those anchor person, they would see 220 million people watching us. There's no feedback mechanism, but they have kind of, they just presume that everybody is watching them and everybody wants to see what they are giving them, because there's no feedback mechanism.
That's very important.
And it's really a missing point. And over the years, basically what happened, the span of attention of the people in America, they have did research we haven't done. It has reduced from 20 seconds to 8 seconds. So what we have done here, we don't do research, but we adapted it really well. Even the mainstream media channels, largest viewership, anchor person, what they do on social media, they just put 8 to 10 second chunks of their programs. Again, it's very tricky. You don't know the background. You just want to give the highlight of your,
So the context is missing.
The context is the missing, and this is being a media consumer. I'm not interested in context, I think. And this is what media manager thinks, without going to the people, without getting the feedback. So, on one way, yes, it's responsibility and there should be mechanisms. But on the other way, even within media, we don't believe in mechanisms. We are bypassing all those mechanisms, watchdogs, all those, processes. You need to have so many people involved in one news item, but then it involves a lot of money, a lot of investment. So somebody like me on Sahi is, enough. And if some fake news or some misinformation, went through under my, if my bureau
and that
is
also undermines the entire journalistic profession and journalism as a whole, when you have fake news appear in even mainstream media or in the mainstream press, and then you have a story coming the next day saying that sorry for that news the previous day, that was incorrect news.
Even this is missing most of the time.
Now we are at this stage where there are no corrections also.
This is missing.
This
is the best part of being ethical journalist. If you have given something wrong, you need to come up, and it's the right of your viewers that they should know that this information was wrong. I'm telling you, it is being in all those media channels. I'm saying these scripting terms are being used, sixers and catches,
very
and
sad.
nobody is really have this courage to come up and tell the people, look, these catches are fake news, or misinformation, or wrong news, and I'm sorry. So this is the best part of journalism, that if you give some wrong information, very next day or very next minute, you come up and just accept. And this is the pillar of ethical journalism, to be courageous and to tell
Admit your mistake.
Yeah, this is the pillar of ethical journalism.
Thank you very much, Aoun. Thank you very much, Asad, for taking out the time and sharing your views with PTV World. Well, you heard the conversation, and in the end, as always, we like to say, please draw your own conclusions from what you've heard. Also, use your head whenever you come across any information on social media or even mainstream media. Do think about what you're reading so that you can clarify it in your own mind. With that hope and on that note, it's goodbye.